And we are recording and streaming with Dr. Tom DiLorenzo on Tuesday, September 24th, 2024 at 1:03 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, as always, and I think most guests here, thank you for your patience and me rescheduling because I'm a bad host and I'm bad at my job. Um, but so in terms of, I do think it is, anyone that watches my podcast knows it's all over the place, from Delta Force operators to astronauts to nuclear physicists and everything. So I would say I'm a jack of all trades, and which is a nice way of saying I barely understand a lot of things. Um, is there any way that something like fiscal reform is going to have any impact on and I don't even mean to sound like some American hating. I'm not. I love obviously the flag. Is there any way that this U.S. military empire running on just an endless credit card of tens of trillions of dollars is ever going to be brought to heel, or is it at this point more philosophical? And for everybody listening, Dr. DiLorenzo, please introduce yourself. If guys, if you go in the description, find his Twitter, Substack, website, all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, people used to say that the Soviet Empire would never collapse, and
Oh yeah, oh yeah, never.
there's a famous economics textbook by a man named Paul Samuelson for decades, beginning in the 1940s. The students who took a introductory economics course in college probably used the book by Paul Samuelson or one of the clones, one of the other books that is just like his, and he predicted in the 1988 edition that by the year 2000, the Soviet economy would be bigger than the U.S. economy. And so a lot of people, failed to anticipate the fall of the Soviet Empire. And, all empires eventually do fall, for the Roman Empire, the Soviet Empire, whatever. And that's we're seeing the collapse of the U.S. empire. And one of the reasons why the establishment, I think, is getting so crazy and literally calling for the assassination of President Trump, and some have actually been coming out, members of Congress actually using language like that, if you can believe it, is that they're panicking because really the wool is being pulled behind from away from the front of the eyes of millions of Americans about the fact that what Trump said in his first inaugural address is that the government works for government. It doesn't work for you. And he looked into the cameras. Like, I remember that moment,
Hmm.
and it was pointing to say you, meaning the American people. And he says, we're going to change that around. And that is really, throwing down the sword in front of the Washington establishment. And I remember watching that, and there was Clinton and Bush and Schumer and all the rest. They were all smirking like high school girls at each other when Trump was saying that, and as though they were thinking, "Oh boy, he's going to see what he's going to see about. He's going to learn something. The CIA is going to teach him a lesson."
Mm.
And as Schumer famously said, they
Six
can
ways
come
from
at you
Sunday.
10 days from Sunday or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that. But I think it's encouraging that they're in such a state of panic, and I think the hysteria and the calling Trump a Hitler 1,000 times a day shows that they know that Americans are catching on to this, and they do see the end of the road, and so I see what they're doing now is sort of their Hail Mary pass, or maybe passes, and getting more and more radical. And I'm not predicting what's going to happen, but I think that's the way I see it, and it kind of encourages me that they're in such a state of panic. And the only reason they are is that the word has gotten out, and it's from the internet has been used for censorship, but it's also been used by guys like you to educate people. And TikTok, the government hates TikTok because the young people mostly have learned all about what's really going on in these wars in Ukraine and Gaza and places that the so-called mainstream media censors. And so now the government wants to get rid of TikTok,
Yeah.
but they can't. They're not going to succeed. Elon Musk is being censored, and that's very dramatic, and it's another indication of how desperate the establishment has become, and for good reason. We're on to them.
I I I think you are probably the only person I've had on in the last 2 months and however, what, July 13th, 2 months, 11 days, that it has said that. And other than myself, not to pat myself on the back, but as I find the silver lining, and this is like I get a lot of criticism for being like too optimistic, and for me, it's a survival mechanism. I have to look at the future as bright so I can keep going. Like it's a personal thing, um, but I don't look at the actions of July 13th and then the second attempt on the golf course. I don't look at those as the actions of a confident regime. A confident regime does something more like 2020 where you kind of like, hey, I'm not worried about Trump's campaigns. I'm not worried about anything because they know that they're going to slide in and do a sly steal in your face. It's the business end of the CIA barrel. We've been on the shooting end of it as the Americans for the last 70, 80 years and seen what it does around the world. Well, now we got the business end of the shotgun, and we saw what 2020 was. Middle of the night, coordinated news stories. It was an intelligence operation. You have to respect your enemy. It was brilliantly orchestrated. What they're doing now are not the actions of a confident, I don't know, maybe smooth regime, which you could say I look at it as a positive. I go, they're not confident, but you also have to, a cornered animal is the one that goes insane. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
also bad. But
It's
your
very
thoughts?
dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very dangerous. They might start another war and that could lead to a nuclear war and end the whole
Yeah.
world.
Uh-huh.
And these people are stupid enough to do that and selfish enough to do that, And just yesterday we learned that supposedly the guy that from the Florida golf course
Mm-hmm.
had some sort of letter that he wrote to his followers who he thought he had followers, I guess, after he was dead. He was thinking he's going to be killed,
Yeah.
and it said, if I missed and I failed in my mission, you can carry forward with the mission, and I or somebody will pay you $150,000. And the so-called Justice Department released that letter.
Yeah.
And of course, the letter could have been written by Merrick Garland. We have no idea who wrote
Probably
this.
was.
It's probably not real, but
Yeah.
they released it under this guy's name, the guy that they caught attempting to shoot Trump at the Florida golf course.
Huh.
And so Eric Trump went nuts over this. He said, what the hell are you doing? You're putting a bounty on my father's head. And they did. I mean, there might be some nut out there who will think, well, I can collect
It,
$150,000 if I can take a shot at President Trump. And that's how evil these people are. And Merrick Garland ought to be put in prison immediately for himself for doing this. I mean, the Secret Service killed a man in where was it? That's some Minnesota or someplace last year, where he was bad mouthing Joe Biden on the
oh
internet,
yeah. Yeah,
making
no.
threatening voices. It was like a 77-year-old man in a wheelchair. The FBI shows up at his house, and the next
Shot
thing I read
killed in the
is
middle of
he's
the night.
dead.
Yeah.
He's dead. They killed him for just doing that. And here's Merrick Garland literally putting a bounty on Donald Trump's head by releasing this whoever wrote this letter, and nothing happens. Nothing happens to him. And if Trump wins, uh, I doubt he'll do it, but he should imprison. He should prosecute Merrick Garland for this.
Yeah, it's like there's a funny comedian who died several years ago named Trevor Moore, and he had a little video sketch, and it was him teaching kids a song, and he's saying like never do this and never do that, but he's giving them the ingredients to crystal meth. He's like never mix like paint thinner, acetylcholine, ketone, and lye. Like never heat it up, never put it on. And it's like the idea is like don't do this, and obviously you're doing it. But that it's kind of along the same lines as like the overtold and crabby joke. But did somebody lose a wad of $100 bills with a rubber band around it? Because I found the rubber band. Like it's the same thing, right? Where it's like, look at this bounty. He's saying someone's gonna pay him 150 grand. Look at this. 350 million people in the country and 8 billion people in the world. Can you believe that if you were to kill Donald J. Trump, you get 150? I mean, I can't even. Can you believe this? It's so you don't come out and say like, hey, no matter what you do, don't attack the presidential motorcade from the southwest side. That's the weak point. Don't do that. It's very
Yeah.
clearly inciting violence, right? And that is but again, it comes back to how do you want to look at this? Are is this a caged animal going crazy? Is this a very unconfident regime? I think Ram Dass said, as the fundamentalist wavers in his faith, he becomes more radical, doubles down, triples down.
Mm.
How do you look at this? Is it they're not confident? I think we both agree on that. Is it a good thing, or does this lead to, you know, some tactical nukes flying into Moscow?
Yeah, well, can't predict what they're
Sure.
gonna do. That's all so subversive. The whole thing is subversive. You know, the guy in Florida, one of the sheriffs in Florida made an important point. He said, "This guy is not from here. He's not from Palm Beach. Not even from didn't doesn't know the area. How did he know that that was the perfect location to set up his AK-47, his rifle to take a shot at Donald Trump? How did he know that street? You know, but like if you or I were to just wander into a strange town like that, how in the world would we figure that out?"
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. That was of all the places to go, right there was like the place where he would have the best chance of success. So he had to have help. Probably the FBI itself would be my guess doing that. And yeah, they proved beyond all doubt that the Russia hoax was a hoax, and he had all these, what was it, 70 spooks that signed this
Mm-hmm.
letter claiming this is legitimate. This comes from Russia, and they all lied. Nothing happened to them, of course, and nobody was even penalized in any way. But the whole world knows that they lied about that now. That there was a one big hoax, and of course, we had last week Hillary Clinton saying we should have a law that would imprison people for making false statements and about elections. And of course, she was behind the Russia the Russia hoax herself, and so she would certainly be target number one for imprisonment if that was actually a law they were doing that. And of course, you would have the government itself defining what's false,
Mm-hmm.
and that's nothing new. That there was a law proposed like that when Franklin Roosevelt was president. There was a senator who proposed a law about saying false statements about the government should be a felony, and of course, the government would be the one to determine what's false. And of course, false in those days would have been defined as criticizing Franklin Roosevelt,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what. So they're just rehashing this old New Deal political tactic when Hillary Clinton says things like that. But they're desperate, and it's very dangerous. There are quite a few people on the internet saying, "Well, they were saying 6 or 8 months ago they were either going to try to kill Trump or start a war." And and sure enough, we had two attempts already, and now we're reading about the escalating of the war in the Middle East, and we're reading about the totally idiotic policy of sending uh, uh, military equipment that could allow the Ukrainians to bomb Moscow. And of course, the Russians aren't going to let that happen, and that's they would declare war on us, and rightfully so if that happened. And so this is very dangerous, and I can't predict what's going to happen. And but on the bright side, it could finally wake up enough Americans out of their mental slumber and get them away from their football games and their worship of Taylor Swift, and face the reality of their own future.
Yeah, it does make, I mean, so again, so I look at something like they stole 2020, but he did win in 2016. Twitter was as we now know through Mark Zuckerberg's statement about the Biden-Harris administration. We know about, I think, from 2022 that the DHS had back end portals and Instagram. It's no longer right conspiracy in the Twitter files. We know that these were, masquerading as as private companies acting as mouthpiece for the administration. But then Elon Musk bought Twitter, and you could say like, well, it's a public company, he can do that. Now, I get that, but I mean, just drop the bullshit for a second. Like if that's one of the main platforms of the national security apparatus, you wouldn't let this guy buy it. There, you'd have some reason why he couldn't. Monopoly, or he's a pedophile, or he's working with China, or the fact that he bought it, and the fact that Trump did win in 2016 tells me that there are either still good guys somewhere in the system or not good guys. Maybe I'm being naive. There are people who oppose the current power faction because they want to have the power, which, if that's the case, hey, I'd still allow, politics makes strange bedfellows. It might just be that this is a different group of billionaires who want power, that they're not the climate change commies. They're the, I don't know, the space exploration fascists. Whatever. At this point, I'm just like, hey, which one doesn't want me dead now? Which one
Yeah.
wants me dead in 30 years? And right now, it does kind of seem like, Zuckerberg throwing the Biden-Harris administration under the bus, Elon Musk just being who he is, Jeff Bezos. It does kind of seem like there is a wrestling of power. So again, you wouldn't allow Twitter to just be bought. You wouldn't allow a guy to, if they truly hated Elon Musk, they wouldn't allow him to put up 30,000 Starlink satellites. Like that is the ultimate high ground in air superiority. There's a reason why we broke apart Space Force from the US Air Force, for the same reason that we broke apart the US Air Force from the US Army Air Forces in 1947. These are all things that you don't just allow. Like, for instance, in Shadow Factory, the book by James Bamford about the NSA, talks about how there's an apartment complex built near Fort Meade, in Maryland, sometime in the early 2000s. And it was over a hill, and you could see Fort Meade. And it was through a classified national security, I don't know, court order, that the owners of the apartment had to sell the building to the NSA because it was in direct line of sight of Fort Meade. And you could get something called tempest radiation, which is, it's like a form of signals intelligence that you almost can't stop from emanating.
Hmm.
My point is if that building went up and it was just there, you would have to look at that with a rational eye and go, somebody didn't just build that. That got approved. And you would dig deeper and find out, well, the NSA bought it. You don't just allow Elon Musk to buy Twitter and to put 30,000 satellites in orbit. There's someone or something. And again, I'm going to try to not be so naive as to just call them the good guys. It might just be the opposing power faction, which for all intents and purposes for me are the good guys because the current one wants me and you and everyone dead. Do you share any of those same ideas, that the fact that it happened, that Trump won in 2016, that Elon Musk bought Twitter, that Mark Zuckerberg's allowed to just come out and say, yeah, that they pressured me into suspending people who pushed COVID misinformation. These again, these are actions and words that would not be allowed under a true iron fist totalitarian regime.
Yeah, well, we don't have a true iron fist regime yet, or we're just on the road to that. But government bureaucrats are all screw ups. They're bureaucrats. No one wants to be called a bureaucrat or their methods bureaucratic. And that's one thing that people have always had going for them. Thank God the government bureaucrats are not efficient in what they do. And they screw up. Trump won, and the same goes for politicians. They're good at conniving and lying. A masterful politician is a masterful liar, conniver, and manipulator. But they're humans and they make mistakes. They believe their own nonsense about the polls saying Hillary Clinton was going to win in a landslide, for one thing. They rigged the polls to say that. And then they apparently actually believe their own rigged polls because
Mhm.
everybody was thinking, oh, Hillary's going to win in a landslide. They were totally shocked when Trump was elected. And so they immediately invented the Russia hoax, and they immediately organized riots in Washington D.C. during the inauguration week and all that, and the rest is history. And so yeah, that's proof right there that uh, these people are not as smart, they're not omniscient, they make mistakes, and it's up to the rest of us to point this out and to encourage more and more Americans to understand these things and to expose them as the corrupt hoodlums that they are. These people that are threatening to destroy the world with waging war on Russia. I can recall sitting next to somebody at a restaurant who was a real rabid Trump hater, a woman, and then I asked her, what has Trump actually done that makes you such vitriolic hatred coming out of you? And she couldn't answer. She didn't have an answer for that, and and so the propaganda works. But
Mm.
and she wasn't a thinking person. Obviously, she'd heard all these stories over and over and over and over again about how evil Trump is Hitler, and she was just really viciously angry about this guy. But she couldn't even explain to me why. And so I don't know. We need to reach the vital few, the people who are at least have some brain matter up there and can save us from these people. And that's what we do here at the Mises Institute. I'm the president of the Mises Institute. We're trying to educate as many people as we can about economic freedom, uh, international peace, true history and not false history. That's basically the things that we work at. And we reach a lot of people, and there are a lot of organizations like us that do this. And you just have to educate the people about the reality of the situation if you can only wake them up first.
How would you correlate it to peace? I mean, I understand like the general concept of fiat currency and slavery and all that. And I understand that the current US empire is just we're just swiping the credit card nonstop. How would it relate to like because in general I've always looked at if there was a silver bullet, which I don't think there is, but if there was a silver bullet for most of, I guess, I don't know, suffering in the world, it would be truly limitless energy, like nuclear power. That would you could desalinate ocean water efficiently, nonstop irrigation, you have robots doing farming. In general, it would be food and water, because that's where most things seem to stem from throughout human. I understand that is an incredibly broad brush, but most problems in human history seem to stem from resource scarcity and tribalism over food, water, and reproduction. In terms of the Mises Institute, how would you say that that relates to international peace?
Well, war is the health of the state. There's a famous
Mhm.
old essay by Randolph Bourne, War is the Health of the State. And every time there's a war or the threat of a war, the states always start depriving us of our civil liberties, raising our taxes, borrowing more money, putting us deeper into debt, regulating the economy, taking over the economy. World War One, World War Two, the government nationalized the railroad industry, and during the world wars, things like that. And then when the wars are over, they never give us back all those freedoms that we had at the beginning of the war. They might give us some, they might cut taxes back a little bit, but not all the way. And so the power of government ratchets up every time there's a war. And then when the war is over, if it ever is over, we don't get all our freedoms back. It doesn't ratchet all the way back down. And so, in terms of having a free society and including economic freedom, just think if we didn't have all these crazy wars all over the world and all these 800 military bases poking our noses in the private business of every country on the planet for no benefit whatsoever in the world of anyone or anything in America but the military industrial complex and the CIA and the deep state. Uh, Look what all this money could be used for, the things that you mentioned. Just not spending another $100 billion in Ukraine, for example. I think the president of Ukraine is in America today, uh,
Finding
lobbying
artillery
for
shells.
more of my money to be wasted and squandered and given to the criminals and crooks like him and who run his government over there. And so, just think of what we could do with all that money if it stayed here in our pockets. And that's why we look at war as the health of the state. And if you want economic freedom, it's connected to that aspect of political freedom and what government does with the military.
Yeah, and to back that up further, I would say look at Dwight D. Eisenhower. Everyone knows the military-industrial complex speech, but there's another one he has where I'm paraphrasing it, like a paragraph long, but in the truest sense, every penny spent on on fighter planes, tanks, and bombers is a penny derived from the civilians. It is a brick schoolhouse in 50 cities. It is a coal power plant that feeds 50,000 families. It is clothes for the naked and food for the hungry. Ultimately, it's the civilian population that is I think draped upon an iron cross. And that's again, so it's you might hear, you and I talking about this, and someone that doesn't know either of us would be like, those hippies. There's a great book called Based Nation by Dr. David Vine. I've had him on here like 2 or 3 years ago, but it's about all of the military base, specifically about U.S. military bases abroad.
Yeah.
And again, to me, I look at when, like, for instance, I've had on Delta Force guys before. I've got to go shooting with them. If they, and now I'm someone that shot a gun a handful of times in my life. When they give me a piece of advice on something, I'm like, that guy, yeah, I'm gonna listen to that guy. He's in Delta Force. That's the apex, that's the tip of the spear. In the same sense, it means so much more to me when you hear these things from career military men. Smedley Butler, even MacArthur in his later years would always talk about the need for a boogeyman to rob you of your own wealth. And then again, five-star general, supreme allied command or supreme commander of the Allied forces, Dwight D. Eisenhower. Like these are not like white guys with dreads telling you about how evil the military industrial complex is. These are the heads of the military industrial
Yeah.
complex. And it is in its true sense, it is a robbery. That's what it is it's a robbery. And it also, to play devil's advocate, you can't go full other end and say, like, abolish the military and open. It's like that also doesn't work. That's also a fever dream. But I I don't I don't see how this solely serves us. And this is more, I guess, more of like a darker turn. And and I always have to clarify this on the show. When I make a point, it's not that I want it to happen. It's just that I believe it will happen. And the analogy I use is if you're watching like 9/11 happen and the first tower goes down, you probably feel like the second tower is going to go down. It doesn't mean you want it. It's horrible. But you're like, if I'm a betting man, that one's going down too. So by saying that, I go, it is it naive? Is it naive to think that if we pull back our military bases and military forces surrounding the world like an octopus, that we're just going to spend that money here and life is going to be better, and that China or Russia or India or someone else isn't going to, over decades, move in and become a new empire? I mean, it is, and there's no right or wrong answer, just asking you, is it zero sum? Is it we either have military bases around the world or China does? And it's neither of them are good answers, but there is one that I would rather choose. There is a lesser of the evils. Do you think there's any validity to that, or am I too pessimistic?
No, if they want to bankrupt themselves with military bases around the world, that's good for them. Let them bankrupt themselves. That's what we're doing.
All right.
All empires bankrupt themselves by overextending their
Yep.
military. Because the Roman Empire, every empire, the Ottoman Empire, it doesn't matter. That's how they all end. The British Empire ended by overextending itself
Mm.
like that, with the sort of government running by like the cast of a James Bond movie with where the bad guys are looking what world domination.
Yeah.
That's who these people are. And yeah, that speech by Eisenhower, economists call that opportunity cost. Every $1,000 that is spent on one thing is $1,000 that cannot spent on something else or many somethings else. And so the key to understanding economics is understanding what is called what is seen versus what is unseen. When the government spends the money, you see it. Okay, if they're paving a road and it's government workers, you see them out there. They're actually doing it. They're paving the road. But what you don't see is what you could have done with that $10 million on the road
Mm.
project alternatively. And it's true of military spending and any other kind of spending. That's why the Great Depression never ended when Roosevelt was president. In 1939, unemployment was still 17%. It was 3% at the beginning of the Great Depression. And the war made it even worse because all these resources went to the war instead of the consumer side of society. And the Great Depression didn't end until the war was over. The war didn't end it. We drafted 11 million men
Hmm.
and sent them overseas. Yeah, so unemployment disappeared, but sending a man to Germany to sit in a foxhole with bombs raining down on him is not the same as that man having a job during the day and then going home to his family at night. There's a bit of a difference there. And so what happened was when the war was over and the military was demobilized, the federal budget was cut by two thirds from 1945 to 1948, and the boom occurred. We had the post-war boom, and all the mainstream economists, so-called Keynesian economists, are saying, well, there's going to be another Great Depression if you cut government spending that much. But no, we had unimaginable prosperity, coming out of the Great Depression because of that. And so, if we were to get rid of the military-industrial complex, or at least half of it, the same thing would happen. We would become extraordinarily prosperous. There was a talk here at the Mises Institute several months ago by David Stockman, who was President Reagan's budget director, a member of Congress, and he's still active in writing and researching. And he gave a talk on how the medical costs of the Iraq War, all the soldiers who were injured, and for the rest of their lives, they're at the VA hospital, and we have statistics on what that costs. And he said, and it's not just the Iraq War; it's all the military
Hmm.
interventions where we have injured soldiers and develop all kind of medical issues, not just injuries, but breathing issues, emphysema, or whatever. Poisons get into their body from being around military installations in wars. And so, well, anyway, Stockman said if we just didn't have the Iraq War alone, the amount we're spending today would be about 2% of what it actually is, according to his calculation. And just that one thing, you could see how many tens of or hundreds of billions of dollars would be saved and put back into our pockets if we didn't have that. And so, yeah, that's if you think of what is seen and what is unseen, we see the military everywhere, but it's hard to imagine when it's what is unseen unless you put a little brain power behind it, and it doesn't take much. I think I heard Robert F. Kennedy Jr. say that when his speech when he endorsed Trump. He came out and said, "Just think what we could do with all this money that we send to Ukraine." And of course, he had a long list of things he thinks it should go to. I think it should all go back to the taxpayers,
Sure,
myself, not
sure.
to give some other politician to spend it on some other thing he wants to spend it on.
There also is, I mean, it's also not just that it's like going to Ukraine. And it's like, they're spending our money again.
We could eliminate the income tax if we
We
did
can,
if we
man, we
if we
should.
really did that.
But when you see that money going to Ukraine, it's more than just a robbery. It is it is a meat grinder. There are humans, I'm 34. There are guys half my age being blown up.
Yeah,
And like that's the very real thing is like this is where it happens. It's not just, oh, we're spending money and Biden this. Well, what if Trump? Well, can you imagine if Obama? I've seen more videos of you know explosive laden drones with cameras zooming in on some dude who's clearly been running for a mile and he's exhausted and he turns around. And I've seen, I mean, in my mind's eye, I can just see like multiple different videos of guys who are clearly running out of breath. They turn around, their faces are in anguish, and they make the sign of the cross before the bomb hits
yeah,
them. That is so unbelievably fucked. Excuse my French.
yeah,
That it's like, yeah, on top of it being a robbery, it's also it's a murder,
yeah.
and
Mass murder.
it is, and it's and it comes back to what you said about, like, well, what do you dislike about Trump? And there, you can dislike anything you want about him. It's fine. People are adults. You're allowed to dislike someone. You're also allowed to just say, I don't know, I don't like him. That's also true. You can just say that. You don't need an explanation. But the brainwashing behind just Russians are evil, kill them all. It's like, dude, like you know that these are people who are conscripted. And so
Yeah.
the point is and what you're also saying to kind of use the same theme and talking about the medical cost of soldiers, and there is also the unquantifiable emotional, spiritual, familial cost. And that in April 2014, over 10 years ago, I lost my older brother to suicide. The ripple effect that has on cousins, aunts, uncles, your parents, your remaining siblings, it took so long to even begin to claw back to any semblance of like a normal family and a normal day-to-day experience. The amount of therapy, the amount of different medications, the amount of if you want to just look at it in cold numbers, the amount of like lost productivity from just like kind of floating aimlessly for years, not knowing which way is up. That's also something that like you can't really put into a line item, but it's true. I mean, and that
Yeah.
was one. That's one suicide 10 years ago. There are 22 veteran suicides a day. 22
Mhm.
daily. You cannot begin to wrap your mind, not you specifically, but I mean everyone, myself included. The real cost of this, it's not just, hey, less money for Ukraine, less money for military bases. It's also like it really is an appeal to humanity. Like, dude, there, yeah, it's not just that the global war on terror costs $6 trillion. We killed 1.5 million civilians. That it,
Yeah.
it is beyond the mind to comprehend. And so, you know, elevator pitch would be like, yeah, we need to have like a sound fiscal policy so you can have more money in your pocket and less going to Ukraine. A deeper pitch, like over a beer on the back porch, is like, dude, these are for every soldier you see killed, there is a mother wailing at home that you can't begin to wrap your head around. And again, not aimed at you. It's not like I'm targeting
Yeah.
you, Mr. DiLorenzo. You don't know about like not that. And I'm not being that guy. I'm 34. What the hell do I know? But it's kind of along the same lines of what you're saying. I don't really know where I was going from there. If there's a question in
Yeah.
there,
Well,
just
the British medical journal, the Lancet, says that the Israelis have killed at least 200,000 civilians in Gaza.
fuck it.
And the place is it's genocide is what's going on over there. And if you look at what you just said, think of these people, and these aren't terrorists. They're just bombing everything. There's videos all over the web on blowing up mosques and hospitals and sewage treatment plants and things like schools being bombed and just carpet bombing the whole country. And there are other people who think it's going to be end up being at least a 500,000 people, women and children and babies included. And it's just the sorrow that you talk about is has to be unimaginable over there. And it's gotten to the point that I've been reading that if a woman over there is pregnant, is about to give birth, where will she go? They blew up all the hospitals. And so there are women giving birth on the streets. Her house is blown up. The hospital doesn't exist anymore. Aid workers are very scarce. And so it's very primitive over there. There's a lot of people are going to be dying of disease. They're talking about polio making a resurgence over there. And it's our bombs. Our American, we're giving them fighter jets, giving them fighter jets. And I was on this talk show about a couple of weeks ago, and with another guest who was from Israel, and he was complaining that some of these fighter jets that our government is giving the government of Israel have defects. They're not perfect. They have some kind of defects. And oh, well, go ask the Chinese and the Russians to give you fighter jets for
Yeah.
free,
Oh, sorry, my bad. I should have get.
bombs, and
Yeah.
so that's what our government is involved in, and so the people all over the Muslim world are going to blame you and me because it's our government that is doing this. They're going to feel justified. Some crazy nut will feel justified setting off a bomb in New York City again or somewhere because of something like this. Blowback is
Yeah,
real.
that Ron Paul, yeah, blowback. And
Yeah.
the real insidious part about blowback is it's not even like, you're in college, your friend's shit faced and he's like, just being an asshole all night. You're like, that guy's gonna get his ass kicked. and we're
Mhm.
his friends and we have to take care of
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
That much you see.
Yeah. Hmm.
What about when the blow forward that causes the blowback? What about when it's all classified and you and I legitimately have no idea? I mean, like, it doesn't
What's
take
that?
that many brain cells to assume that we probably have special forces in Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel. What
Yeah.
happens when they are running some black ops stuff in, I don't know, Sierra Leone, and we don't know about it? And then
Yeah.
10 years from now, there's a new Taliban and a new bin Laden, but it's whoever from Sierra Leone. And instead of 9/11, it will be, whatever, they'll gas Atlanta airport. And we go, well, why do they hate us? They attacked us for our freedom. If you knew what happened, you'd probably kind of be like, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, why wouldn't they do that? So it's the same thing. It's like, when the comedian I love, and he's talking about, what happened, what about all the like the innocent farmers that like the innocent like goat herders in Afghanistan, extraordinary rendition in the middle of the night, a bunch of guys in ninja outfits, special forces, Navy SEALs break down your hut, shoot your mom and take your dad and throw him in Gitmo, you never see him again, and you're just some 12-year-old kid. You would want to seek revenge. And
Yeah. Of
can you even blame?
course.
Can you
Yeah.
blame? You can't. And and then it's like it's doubly screwed because now that kid wants revenge and he's going to come here and try to get revenge. And on a human level, you understand why he wants that revenge. That being said, I also don't want to die. So I'm not against the military taking him out. So it's a really crappy, like, they want to come kill you. And you're like, well, I kind of understand why they want to come kill me. And it's like, well, do you want us to let them kill you or do you want us to bomb them? And you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, bomb them. I don't want to die. I'm 34, but it's like, can you stop serving up the what was it, South Park when Clinton and Trump were running against each other and they said it's a turd sandwich versus a bowl of shit or something. Like
Yeah.
these were the two candidates. And you're like, I'd really rather not eat either of them. It's like you have to have one. You're like, I guess I'll have the sandwich. At least there's bread. Like
Yeah.
that's how it kind of feels. So I don't really know where I'm going with this again, if you
Yeah.
can
Well,
tell.
you know that everything government does is kind of like it's an arsonist that starts a fire, and then as soon as
Wants
the
to be the
fire is
hero.
blazing, it changes clothes into a firefighter's outfit and pretends to be putting the fire out.
Look at
It's
me.
that it started itself, and whether it's the military or the Fed or anything else, that's how government works.
And then it also sucks because that's also not always the answer. Every guy I've ever interviewed, every dude I've ever interviewed, God fearing, American loving, love their mom and love their hometown, and they joined up because they wanted to defend their home. And you're like, well, it'd be so much easier if these were all like, Henry Kissinger-esque guys that are like, I want to take
Yes.
over the world. You'd be like, yeah, that guy's evil. But it's like every dude I know who's my age who served, I'm like, that's just he's a good guy. And then you're
Yeah.
like, it really is. It's so I mean, I don't even know what the silver. I guess it would be. Maybe you're right on it. I guess it would be like sound money. Don't don't
Yeah.
give in. I don't know. Not to sound hopeless. I'm not. But it's a it's a mighty big Rubik's cube. How
Yeah.
to
Well,
solve
well,
this
I think
issue.
what's eventually going to happen is that the country will break apart through acts of secession,
Hmm.
and we'll have parts of the country, states or groups of states or parts of states that'll just start ignoring the government. That's what the
Yeah.
Russians eventually did, and or the people, not the Russians, but the satellite countries,
Hmm.
just ignoring their rulers because their rulers were weakened and demoralized. And that's going to happen here, maybe long after I'm gone. But I
Yeah.
think that's what'll happen. So you'll have you had some countries after the breakup of the Soviet Union that were more free than others. At the beginning, Estonia was freer than most of the other former Russian satellite states, as they were called.
Yeah.
And I think something like that is bound to happen here. We're already seeing what people are calling soft secession, with people leaving socialist New York and socialist California and socialist Illinois and going to Florida, Texas, South Carolina, places where there's a greater degree of freedom and the government is not so crazy to do such things as they do in Minnesota. And if your 12-year-old daughter is talked into the fact that she's really a boy and they want to sterilize her and remove her breasts, they can take the girl from you, the parent, and do that to her in Minnesota. Uh, And that's Kamala Harris's running mate. He's the governor
Yeah.
of Minnesota. That's his law out there. And so, and I should have put Minnesota on that list. You know, people are getting the hell out of Minnesota too because they don't want to live in that kind of a society. So we're already seeing what they're calling soft secession.
Mm. We're at 45 minutes. I'll let you go. But I was gonna say just kind of more as like a parting thought. There's really no, it's not even a really question. Is you begin to think maybe on the scale of, I mean, I don't know, when did we stop being hunter gatherers and start agricultural revolution? 10,000 BC, which call it roughly 10,000 BC. Empires rise and fall. Some last for 250 years, some last for 500, 1,000, and they fall. But we undeniably do not live in the same world that we lived in 12,000 years ago. I mean, we're doing a show on the microphone and an iMac
Yeah.
over internet. Is it that much like, your parents raise you for you to be better than them, and your parents want to do a better job than their parents, and then you have kids and you want to be a better, you're constantly improving. You get old and die. I don't think anyone would say that that's like a failure. You'd be like, hey, you get old and die. It might be that empires are just, instead of a human lifespan and your parents dying and then you growing old and you dying over the course of however many decades, it might be that over the course of tens of thousands of years, family units are almost like an empire. They rise, they do something, they push something forward. My
Mm.
ancestors came from Ireland, and the next, moved to New Hampshire, and then the next, get a job here, and everyone's trying to be better than, I'm the first one to graduate from college. You try to better your offspring. You almost wonder if empires are just like the family unit of civilization, and that as the U.S. empire fades, and I would imagine it'll probably be China or some Chinese Indian alliance or Chinese Russian, they will rise for 2, 3, 400 years, and they'll push forward. They'll push forward space travel. They'll push forward medicine. They'll do a lot of horrors like us, and then they'll slowly fall, and the next one will rise. And
We can steal their technology.
exactly, yeah. And it kind of nothing's new under the sun, but nonetheless, like quality of life does, for the most part, trend better over the millennia. It might be that this is just kind of the cycle of things on like a meta scale.
Well, what has, freedom is what allowed us to trend upward. The world was stagnant
Mhm.
economically for centuries, but it wasn't until we discovered and invented economic freedom and capitalism and the division of labor that humanity progressed. And the division of labor is the key to it all.
Mm. And with that, Dr. DiLorenzo, so we wrap this one up. Thanks for coming on, man. You're a cool dude. It's as you can tell, there's kind of no set there's no guardrails to the conversation.
Yeah.
It
Well,
goes
thanks for
whichever
having me.
way.
It was fun.
That was fun, man. I'd love to have you on again sometime. And yeah, I'll email you this link. Dude, thank you so much for coming on. You're cool. Not to, not to disrespect the doctor, but you're a cool dude. You're a
It's
cool
okay.
dude. And as
Anytime.
a fellow Tom, you do have a good name. So yeah,
Okay.
man. Thank you so much for coming on, sir. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please go in the description, find a Substack, Twitter, website, all that good stuff. I will email you this. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.